We have 2.5 million prisoners, and they all have family members. I wouldn't have known about the mass incarceration unless my own brother hadn't gone to prison. And that horrified me, the idea that something so big could happen and people not know. I was in my early 30s, not quite mid-30s, and my brother was arrested and charged with a drug conspiracy. And now we're both senior citizens, and he has about 3.5 years left, if all goes well, keeping good time and things like that. In lieu of maybe some major changes in the near future, he'll do that much more time. Right now we're in the November Coalition office, and it's a nonprofit that formed about 13 years ago in 1997, beginning of the year. And it formed because I was writing my brother. He's a prisoner of the drug war and was in a federal prison in Oxford, Wisconsin. And I had been sending into the prisons pictures of web pages and explaining the internet to an imprisoned person. And so my brother was sharing these missives with other prisoners, and they came up with the idea that maybe if the families could organize against the injustice of the drug war, and we could lend the prisoners' stories. Well, we put it to people this way: it's our government who should be ashamed, not us. And we need to tell what we're going through. And so then it developed into family members becoming speakers and organizing themselves in their community. We put up I think it was how to be a grassroots activist or something. And then we expanded it after a tour of all around the country to about 110 cities. Through that, we developed a guide to activism we call Bottoms Up. And that's when people started to actually, read and say, well, okay, I do this, and then I do this, and then I can do this, and I can have a meeting and put up a poster. We can decide what we want to work on locally. So now the activity of the November Coalition, when you say, what do? People do all kinds of things. Some people work on the problem of informants. Some groups work on their own community policing. Some groups work on sentencing law, particularly. We take part in any kind of drug reform in our region and anti-jail initiatives, and then we try to take our experiences collective with others and turn that into a guide so other people can do it too. In our state, people have to pay for court as part of your punishment, so you might get a $10,000, $15,000 fine, and then there's 12% interest that accrues. So if a person spends 5 years in prison with a $10,000 debt, by the time they get out, it might be $20,000. And then if they don't make regular, constant effort taking down their fines, they're out of compliance and going to be put in jail. That's part of the reason you're hearing a baby in the background. It's because a family with 6 children had the father taken into prison for noncompliance. And in the bad economy, there aren't any room in our shelters, and there isn't anyone who could take a woman with 6 children. So we did tell the agencies in town, and everyone can put their heads together and figure this one out. But if we're going to put the men in prison, who's going to take care of the children?
Mothers in Charge is a group of mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and sisters, most of whom have lost a son, a daughter, or loved one to violence. I founded the organization back in May of 2003 after the death of my son, Khalid. He was 24 years old. This is actually his graduation picture from University of Maryland. He was shot 7 times over a parking space on American Street in Philadelphia. And I said, I want to do something to make a difference with the issue of violence in our community. I think mothers can get together. So many of the mothers in our communities are suffering this awful pain and this tragedy of having to bury our sons and our daughters. And I think we need to try to make a difference. So last year we went into Riverside Prison, which is the only female correctional facility here in Philadelphia. So many of the women that were incarcerated were there because of drug charges. They were there, they were incarcerated sometimes up to 2-3 years. So many times when mothers especially are the head of households, because I guess maybe 70-80% of the households here in Philadelphia and across this country are headed by females. So when that female, that mom, goes away to prison, then oftentimes those children become the victims or perpetrators of violence.
I direct and am a teaching artist for the Free Right Jail Arts and Literacy Program, which serves youth who are incarcerated in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center. And I was just reading a piece of writing that a student was doing a couple days ago, and he was chastising just the average Joe who gets all their information from the news media, and they would think that someone who deals drugs and who gets in violent conflicts with somebody else, that they're just a bunch of gangbangers who should be locked away forever. And a lot of the legislation follows that sentiment, plays on the average kind of fear. When this average person advocates for lock those people up and throw away the key, they don't have it in their head that most of those people are kids.
The reason why I'm doing this is to get the child's voice out, because children are affected by the drug war just like the grown-ups. And sometimes people think, oh, let's put the kids in a foster home, and then that's the last you hear of them. You don't really hear what really happened and the long-term effects and the PTSD and how it affects with being able to just deal with things, losing a parent and they go to prison or something like that. The first bad experience I ever had was when I was in kindergarten, and I had always grown up knowing that marijuana, I didn't know what it was, I just knew it was daddy's flowers. That's it, it's daddy's flowers. And so I didn't think nothing of it. And I'm going to kindergarten, and I'm sitting in the living room and with a fellow that was at our house, and all of a sudden we hear knock, 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 and boom, here comes the door flying open. And there was a jar of weed sitting on the couch, and the guy grabbed it, threw it to my mom. She's like throwing it out the door, and they're hiding it, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I run around the corner of the bar that we had in the house, and there they are in their all black SWAT uniforms, full headgear, big machine guns, the dogs coming in. They got my mom over here. I wasn't really paying attention to what they did to her because I was so focused on the fact that they had my dad. And they're like dragging him out the front door and slamming him down on the porch, and he's like crying and screaming.
But now I pulled my bootstraps up again, and I've pulled my family back together. I have an 8-year-old son at home. I have horses. I have a farm. My daughter's raised through what we went through. And I think it's made me a stronger person. I think it's given me, it was an anger at first, but now it's turned into more of, I really hope these people learn and understand what they're doing to people, because they're hurting some good people in this drug war that don't deserve this. They don't deserve this kind of torture in their lives, and the effect that it has on your kids, and having to move and losing everything, and over a plant. It's all over a plant. I don't understand it.